Welcome back to another recipe video. Today we're going to be making chocolate chip cookies, chewy or gooey, whatever you prefer. It's all going to come down to the bake time. But before we get started, the first thing you're going to want to do is get your butter at room temperature, softened, good to go. Not melty, you don't want it melty, but soft to the touch. We're going to be using a stick of butter. And you're gonna need some all-purpose flour, brown sugar, white sugar, vanilla, 1 egg, baking powder, baking soda, a little bit of salt, and of course, you can't have chocolate chip cookies without the chocolate chips. We prefer to buy Ghirardelli. They're the best here usually, but whatever you prefer is what'll work for this. So I went ahead and preheated the oven. You're gonna wanna put your oven on 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And while that's heating up, you can either grease your cookie sheets or you can do a little hack and use like a baking sheet, silicone baking mat over your baking sheet, or parchment paper is what I use because it's easy and quick to clean up. So you get your mixer with your whisk attachment, your beater attachment. If you have the KitchenAid mixer with the attachment that has the scraper on the side, that would be even better, but I don't have that one yet, so we're just gonna go with the regular beater. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cream together our butter and sugars, both sugars. So I'm gonna dump the butter in. Now we wanna measure out our brown sugar. Measure out a cup of brown sugar packed firm. You want it packed in tight to make sure you have enough. I'm using a half a cup twice just because it's what fits in my containers, but if you can measure it as a cup to start, it'll save you time, obviously. So there's one of them. And there's 2. And then next we're gonna put in our white sugar. You're gonna need 3 tablespoons of white sugar, granulated white sugar. There's 1, 2, 3. My baking assistant didn't want to join me today. She would rather watch Shaun the Sheep. So if you hear that in the background, that's what's going on. All right, so we've got our butter and sugar in the mixing bowl. So we're gonna lock it and we're gonna mix it up for about 1 to 3 minutes to get it fluffy and combined. So our butter and sugar is creamed together. Now we're just gonna add in, our egg and vanilla. The recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I usually don't measure it out. I just dump a little in, but I'll measure it today just for you guys. By the way, the recipe I'm using is from the Neiman Marcus website. It's supposedly their Neiman Marcus cookie recipe. But theirs calls for, I think it's, what is the ingredient? Like espresso, coffee espresso or something. And we don't really like coffee, so I just leave that out and it comes out great. I've always used it this way. I've been using this recipe for like, I want to say 15 years. This has been my go-to chocolate chip cookie recipe. So I'll leave a link in the description if you want to see the original. And we're just gonna mix these together for about a minute and get it nice and combined. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I'm gonna stop that. raise it up. One step I forgot to mention that I normally do when I make this recipe is I put the flour, baking powder, baking soda, and salt in a separate bowl, sift it together, and whisk it before I add it to the cookie dough mixture. So I'm gonna do that real quick, but ideally you would do this before you start, which is what I normally do. So you need 1 3/4 cup of flour. And then 1/2 teaspoon each of baking powder, baking soda, and salt. There's the baking powder, baking soda, and our salt. I'm using sea salt because that's what we like right now. And then I'm just gonna gently whisk it together to aerate it a little bit, get it incorporated, mix it up, break up any clumps of flour that are in there. And that's it. Now we're just gonna gently add it to our wet mixture in the mixing bowl. Put that down. And I'm gonna put it on low, very low to start so all the flour doesn't poof out of there. But once it starts to get incorporated, I'll turn it up a little bit. And at this stage, you don't want to over mix it. So you want it just combined. So be sure and watch. When you first start mixing, it looks kind of crumbly, but then as it goes, it'll start to come together. Okay. All right, I'm just gonna scrape off the beater a little bit. And that's all there is to it for making the actual cookie dough. So I'm gonna take this off of there. And now we're gonna add in our chocolate chips. I never measure this exactly. I just pour it into our liking. So you can add however many you want. Good place to start if you're a measurer would be with 1/2 cup probably. And if you like them really, really chocolatey, then you can add more than that. And then just gently combine it. This is a pretty thick cookie dough, in my opinion. So it's kind of hard to get the chocolate chips to stick in there. But I don't really care. We just make it work. Okay. All right, so our dough is ready. We're gonna wanna make about 1 tablespoon, a little bigger, cookie dough balls. Look like that. You're just gonna put them on your pan and like kind of squish them down just a tiny bit so that they're not so heaping. They get done quicker that way. And you're gonna want to spread them out about 2 inches. So leave a little space or else they'll all run together. And this isn't an exact science. I just eyeball it. Hopefully that works for you too. This cookie dough recipe makes about, I think 12 to 15-ish cookies of this size. She's enjoying showing the sheep. Of course, you can make gigantic cookies too if you want. You just won't have as many, but we've done that before. We've made really huge ones. So I was able to fit 12 on my baking sheet, but these are pretty big baking sheets. You might not be able to fit 12 on yours. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this batch in the oven, and then I'm gonna put the rest of the dough on the other sheet while I'm waiting. I don't like to cook them at the same time because I feel like it messes with the doneness of each tray because they can't be on the same level. So we're just gonna stick this one in at 300 Fahrenheit. We'll start with 10 minutes on the timer and see from there. Everybody's oven is different. So if you like it gooey, 10 minutes will probably be good. But if you like it a little chewier or even crunchy, you would want to go longer. So we'll check at 10 minutes and we'll come back. All right, so this is what the result is around the 10-minute mark. It's still pretty gooey and soft. To be honest, if I were going to make these just for myself, that's probably when I'd stop baking them, because they do set up more once they're cooled. They harden a little bit, but if you want them done and chewy, we're gonna keep going. I did rotate the pan halfway through, so if your oven is kind of spotty on how it heats and bakes, you might want to rotate the pan. So obviously we're not going to stop there. That would be super gooey. So we're going to go probably like 3 minutes longer and check them then, kind of play it by ear and see how it goes. Your oven is probably different than mine too, so you'll want to start checking around the 10-minute mark, and depending on how well you like them done, either keep cooking or maybe they'll be ready. So it's been about 15 minutes that they've been baking. I'm gonna go ahead and take them out. They should be ready to go at this point. They'll start turning brown a little at the edges the crispier they get. So if you like them crispy, chewy, you want to see a little bit of a golden brown around the edge on the bottom. There they are in all their deliciousness. I usually let them cool on the pan for about 5 minutes or longer before I try to transfer them to the wire rack to cool completely. So I'm gonna leave them on here, and they'll continue baking just a little bit too on there, which is honestly why I prefer to take them out a little bit more underdone, because I leave them on the pan and they continue to bake a little bit once they're out of the oven. So like I said, this was the result after 15 minutes. We're gonna let them cool a little on the pan. I'm gonna stick the other tray in the oven. I think we ended up with about 19 cookies, which I think is the most I've ever had out of this batch. I feel like it's different every single time I make them, so I just never know. So I'm gonna stick this in and rotate it halfway through. We're gonna plan on 15 minutes for the bake time. So the cookies have been cooling on the baking sheet for about 5 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and, honestly, I probably don't even need this. They're set up pretty good. They're still somewhat gooey in the middle, but crunchy around the edges, a little crisp on the edges. And we'll just stick them over here to finish cooling. But she's really enjoying Shaun the Sheep lately. So one of my favorite things to do is to have a chocolate chip cookie while it's warm, fresh out of the oven. I feel like if you make chocolate chip cookies and don't do that, what are you even doing with your life? Here's what it looks like. It's crispy on the edge, gooey in the middle. I mean, look at that. Delicious. Yeah. So at the 15-minute mark, almost perfect for me. It's got that crisp, sugary, crunchy edge, and then like most of the center is just gooey still, but not underdone, I don't feel like. However, if you love crunchy or even chewier cookies, I would cook them close to 20 minutes for chewy, and then 25-ish for really crunchy cookies. But I think 15 minutes is perfect, in our oven at least. And one thing I wanted to mention, if you grease your pan and don't use like a silicone baking mat or parchment paper, your cook time is probably going to be reduced, because it's going to crisp them up quicker if they're in direct contact with the pan. So something to keep in mind. You might want to watch closer to your cook time if you're doing that way. But yeah, 15 minutes. I think that's good. Delicious. If you try these, please let us know in the comments how they turned out for you. And if you have questions about the recipe, I'll try to answer those as well. And I'll leave the original Neiman Marcus recipe in the description. But other than that, I hope you enjoy. Thanks.